following is a work of fiction and should not be taken as actual history.
Meet Professor Roger Hill, historian, adventurer, and raconteur extraordinaire. He travels to parallel worlds where history went differently and brings back lectures on his findings. So grab a prime seat, pay attention, and take good notes. This is Alternate History 100. Welcome to the class.
Good morning. Has everyone had their coffee? Good. Because I'm about to talk about the most boring topic ever. Economics. Sorry, I'm even putting myself to sleep. But try to stay with me because this is really important. The current occupant of the White House wants to put tariffs on just about everything America imports. He believes that this is a good idea. He believes that the cost will be borne by the nations that sell things to the United States. And he's so wrong. Let's begin by defining what a tariff is. A tariff is a fee collected on imported goods when they arrive in the country. It is not paid by the exporter. No, it is paid by the importer of the goods. Now let's say that Maria owns a steel mill, and she brings in some iron ore from Canada for the making of her steel. She's going to have to pay more for that ore, which drives up her production cost, and that forces her to raise the price of her finished steel. And when she sells the steel to an automaker in Detroit, it raises their production cost, and they have to put up their prices too. So when that car comes to a showroom near you, you're going to have to pay a higher price. But what if you can't? Because of the tariff, that car is now too expensive for you, so you put off the purchase. And you're not the only one to do that. So demand for new cars goes down. The automaker has to cut production. And some of the auto workers lose their jobs. And now they can't afford to buy things. And somebody else's demand goes down. And they cut jobs too. And those people stop buying things. And so on and so on and so on in a downward spiral. And then it gets worse. The countries that you put tariffs on you. That makes your goods unaffordable in their lands as well, so you lose those markets. So your manufacturers cut even more jobs. And now you've got people lined up around the block at welfare offices from coast to coast. Does that sound pretty bleak? Well, it's not just theory. It's what happened in our world back in 1930. It all began, of course, with the stock market crash in October 1929. That was brought about by overly inflated stocks, many of which had been bought on margin, credit. People thought that they would sell the stocks for a profit before the payment came due. But when those stocks collapsed, they owed more than they had, and they went bankrupt. Now I know what you're thinking, and you're right. I can't go wrong quoting Magnum P.I. You're thinking that a lot has changed since 1929. And yeah, it has. We have a much better social safety net than they did back then, and we've had bigger market drops since then without putting everybody on the street. October 1987 saw a drop almost double what happened in 1929. And then there was the dot-com bubble of 2000 and the housing crisis of 2007. We got through those, right? But the difference is they kept trade alive in those years. Things dipped, but they didn't fall off a cliff. But let's go back 100 years. The 1920s saw the nations of Europe recover from World War I. They began to export agricultural goods once more. That gave American farmers serious competition in the marketplace, and prices fell because of bumper crops at home. Agricultural interests lobbied the federal government for protection. In his 1928 campaign, Herbert Hoover promised to deliver such protection, But the effort to make it happen did not get through the Senate. But once the stock market crashed, protectionism came back. And this time, lobbyists weren't just asking for tariffs on agricultural goods. The industrial states joined in a chorus of "Me too, me too!" Senator Reed Smoot of Utah and Representative Smoot-Hawley of Oregon sponsored a bill to raise tariff rates that were already pretty high. The bill squeaked through the Senate and cruised through the House. There was a petition from more than 1,000 industrialists, including Henry Ford, urging President Hoover to veto the bill. But Hoover ignored the petition and signed the bill into law on June 17, 1930. The result was a series of similar tariffs going up in other countries. And for the next 4 years, global trade declined by 67%, making the existing depression far, far worse. Not just for America, but for the entire world. But what if those tariffs didn't go up in 1930? What if Hoover had listened to Ford and vetoed that bill? What if he'd said to Hawley, "What you talk about, Willis?" "Nothing." "Professor Hamilton said you wouldn't get that joke. You just cost me $20. Yeah, now you laugh. Okay. Well, I went to a world where Hoover did veto the bill. And here's how it went. Because that America did not cut off overseas trade, the nations of Europe were more able to keep up their loan repayments for World War I. This was good for both the U.S. Treasury and the U.S. banks, which meant there was more money to fund projects at home. In Britain, the coal mines and steel mills and shipyards did not shut down as they did in our world, because trade was still flowing. In Canada, they were still able to sell fish and newsprint and wood and wheat, although the drought that brought a dust bowl to our world also happened there. As in the Panic of 1893, the markets came back in about 4 years. That was too late to save Mr. Hoover, who got trounced by Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1932 election, just like he did in our world. But at least the years following that were much better than they were here. Recovery from that world's depression was complete by the summer of 1935. So now to your assignment. I want you to read the materials I brought back, compare and contrast how the Great Depression of the 1930s went in our world and that one, and then gaze into your crystal ball and write 1,000 words, editorial style, on how you think Trump's tariff will affect the next decade. Will we have a golden age like Trump promised? Or should the only Apple stock that you invest in right now be an Apple cart that you can push through the streets of the coming depression? That's due next time we meet. As they might have said in the hoity-toities, yous can hit the bricks. Or in modern English, class dismissed. Hi, I'm Gary Wheeler. Alternate History 100 is a labor of love with the twin goals of entertaining you and making you think. If you like what you heard today, please hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and tell your friends about us. Your word of mouth can really help this channel grow. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Until then, keep thinking and make some history of your own.
The preceding was a work of fiction and should not be taken as actual history.